Welcome to Genshin 101. We're going to be learning how to make Genshin mods. And we're going to first start off with downloading the Genshin model importer. We're going to start specifically by grabbing over the assets that we need. We need we need the blender.py, we need the gimme for development. Those are the two things. And then we're going to be downloading the assets as well. All the links are going to be down below, so you should use those. I'm using the CLI one, which is just copy paste in terminal and you're done. That brings it in. These are the assets that have all the characters and whatnot from the weapons and all the player character data. So the blender.py unlocks the frame analysis dump, which is just the import for the assets. There's about other ones, but this is the main one. We just go into the player character data and then we just grab the one that we need. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on Amber this run. It's a little bit easier. Yeah, that's it. So this tutorial assumes that you already know how to install Blender's add-ons and everything. And then we grab body and the head real quick. There's 4 objects to each character sometimes. So it can go from 2 objects from simple characters like Amber, or 3 objects for other characters like Arlecchino. So Arlecchino has and these 3 objects are the head, dress, and the body. And then there's one more, which is the 4th, which is the extra. So that's the 4th object that they use. Sometimes, depends on the character. Each character is different. Chiori uses dress, head. So it's body, dress, extra, and head for Chiori. So now we're back to Amber, and then we're going to head over and then see each object. So Amber has a body and a head, right? So those 2 objects have the first index and the first vertex. So these are the properties that each object has, and we can treat the properties like an ID. So when we bring in another object and we want to make it inherit the other ID or property, we just join it in and it's done. It inherits that property. You can check all that in the end panel right there in the properties. So end panel properties, you'll see right there for this object, the cube, it doesn't have anything, but Amber's body does. So we want to transfer that over to the Amber's body, and then we just head over and just join it and it's done. Real quick. All right, so we're going to head over and then we're going to clean up the mesh. So whenever you import the mesh, it's a little bit messy. It's not a big deal, but you can just clean up by deleting loose. That gets rid of the extra vertices out of nowhere. Now why that happens, it imports with them, I have no idea. But then also the vertices are separated, so if you want to merge them and grab them all together, you can. Just make sure to sharpen the edges so the shading is all good, or else the shading is going to be kind of crap. Same goes for the hair, but why we'd want to merge it is for sculpting on it, or we're just going to edit the mesh. And if that happens, then yeah, we can sculpt on it. If it's not, it's going to be off. The mesh is separate. So when you sculpt, it's going to be separate. It's going to separate. So each character has their own UV maps, right? So they have the text chord .xy. So the text chord has to be capital completely. If not, it's not going to work. And so there's 2. There's a text chord, and then there's a text chord with the 1 at the end of it. And that one is for the back faces. So you got the front face and the back face. That's the text chord 1 for the back face. So each character, as I said, has its own UV map. So if it only has 1, probably just use 1. If it has 2, you can use 1 or 2. Going right into the vertex coloring. So this is the color attributes. We can check them out with the spreadsheet. So if we head over to the spreadsheet, we can check out the face corners to see what the alpha is for it. So in the colors, we have 0.502. So that's the alpha. And that's what's really important for the vertex coloring, because the vertex coloring is just basically the outlining. So if it has the outline, you see the outline in the game, that's exactly what it is. So the way we can adjust the color attributes, the easiest way is just to separate pieces that we want to change. So let's say we delete this color, we add a new one, face corners and byte color for the data type and domain. And then the name has to be capital. So case sensitive again, capital. So here I'm adding the 3.16 for the alpha and the GB, so the blue and the green. But I'm adding a 1 for the red because generally it's just a 1. So that's just a range you can go with. You can go with a range of 0, 0.5. So at that range, you can get a good result. So if I want to join it back together, all we need to do is just join it literally, and then clean up the mesh again with a little merge by distance, and then make sure to turn off the sharp edges. Sorry, sharp edges, because of the fact that it's already been there. And then you check it again, and it'll be joined. And you can check the color, and the color's already set. That's what you'd need to do to make sure everything is good in game. So now we're gonna head over and check out the texturing. The texturing is dictated by the UVs, so make sure you get the good UVs done. We're using paint.net, which is what I'm going to be focusing on. This is going to export as DDS, and specifically BC7 DDS, without anything, it's just native. And so here's the naming scheme. The naming scheme is amber diffuse body. So it's character name, object part, then texture type, and then DDS. So amber body diffuse .dds. And we're going to be exporting as sRGB for diffuse, linear for light maps, and linear for normal maps as well. And now we're going to conceptualize the texture alpha flip. So for the alpha flip, what we're doing is that we're flipping the alpha layer mask. But to conceptualize that in a simpler method or way is to think of it like actual layers. So there's alpha layer 1 and alpha layer 2 right under. So there's 2. And the alpha flip is when they switch positions. Now, the reason you want to do this is because each of the layers, so the layer on top and the layer bottom, the top layer is emissive and the bottom layer is diffuse. When they switch positions, the top still remains emissive, but now the position has changed. So the area of the texture that wasn't masked is now on the opposite side. So that switches where the emission and the diffuse is handled. Now heading over to the light map, we can visualize it a little bit differently. There's 5 sections within a range divided between 1, 70%, 50%, 30%, and 0. And when you flip it, it flips all of them, except for the 50% that stays in the center. But in reality, it's just switching the layer mask. Now the light map has like a few colors. We're talking, the main ones are green, magenta, and blue. And for the hair, it's red, yellow, and orange. So the best method to deal with the light map is to color pick. This will also color pick the alpha. With the alpha picked and the correct color picked, you can use that same one for your own texture. So a quick explanation of each color's job is that the green does most of the clothing. So the clothing is mostly green, and also the skin is usually green. The black is the always in shadow. So that one is always dark. It's never lit. The magentas handled the metallic. So there's a metallic madcap that is reflected in the game. And the last one is the blue. So it can be blue, purple, depends on the character's original texture. And that one is the specular, so the highlights. So in practicality, when you put a little bit of blue in some area and then the sun comes over, you can see a little bit more extra reflection on that area. But there is a common alpha, and the common alpha for one of them is the 50%, and that 50% is usually white. And sometimes because the skin is very close to white, then that skin is also in that 50%, but you do have to check. So we're going to go back to paint.net so for practical test here. So we can't really change the alpha using the opacity here right in the layers property. So that won't work. We got to use one of the plugins. So the alpha transforms allows you to shift over the alpha to another set. We're currently using Amber's texture, so we can take a look. This one's a simple one. It doesn't have like 5, it only has like 2 or maybe 3, technically speaking, because it does have like a 50%. So this is a 3 one. This is a 1, 50%, and then the inverse. We can take a look right here. This is a white. You see, we grab that color pick, look at the alpha. The alpha's at 128, 50%, and that's at white. And the skin is completely in the inverse. You see, they're just skin, inverse. Also, some of the skin is in the black. So, in permanent shadow. Now we're heading over to checking out some errors that can happen. So one of the errors that can happen is these black artifacts. And that usually happens when we resize the image. So let's say we go 200%. That's like double the size. And then when we flip the alpha, we have black artifacts. As you can see, you'll see them right there. Here's a really dominant ones right here. And there's a quick fix for this. And the quick fix is just simply grab the opposite. So you have 2. You actually duplicate the layer. We have 2 now. And then we flip. And then we merge it into 1. And so the one that was messed up, all the black artifacts get overwritten by the other one. So it changes a little bit of the alpha, so the downside. So again, when we save it, we're going to save it as BC7 linear when we export. And the naming convention again is the name of the character, the body part, and then finally the texture type. So another practical example is like when we have a new texture that we're making, it's usually like we have the original on like the left or the right or whatever, and then we come in with our own custom one. This is a lazy edit. This is what you'll see a lot of times in Genshin modding, where it's just a square and you blank it with the color picked color, and that works specifically. But if you had any whites, let's say you needed to add, you would throw it in at 50% right into that green somewhere. Sometimes the skin is at 50%. So here we go, PC7 linear export using that same name. It works. Now we're going back to Nahida. So that same green, but we also now got different alphas. So as you can see, like color pick them, they're completely different. So 78, there's no 50% on her, so there's just 78, 177. But for the normal maps, it's a little bit even easier. All we need to do is color pick one of the base colors and then fill it up with one color, and that does it. Usually we're just gonna get rid of it because I haven't seen anyone actually make a full-on normal map. It's also saved under BC7 linear, so same as light maps. Only the diffuse is on sRGB. Now we're going to be hanging over and talking about the vertex groups. So each character has like about 1 through 100, more or less. Depends on the characters. So each number corresponds to a bone, a skeleton in game. We can't see it, but they do. So what we got to do is we got to map it out on our own mod. And the hair also has its own. So let's say we want to bring in a cube, a sphere cube. We're going to throw in a the data transfer modifier. I'm going to head over to the nearest plane interpolated, grab it as a source, and then generate the data layers. And that fills up the vertex groups without even having to do that manually. So you wouldn't want to manually add like 100 vertex groups. We're going to do a quick UV project so we can check it out, how we would do a full kind of additive new thing. So we do the color flat up with 3.6, switch up the name of the UV map to text chords, capitals, make sure, .xy. The new UVs would be now attached as a new join. And then we can move it out of the way. You know, how we organize it, the UV maps is up to you. You can do it tiled or whatever. Heading back to the vertex groups, we can figure out that if we do a vertex data transfer modifier completely. It kind of gives us a sloppy job, so not recommended, but it's quick. As you'll see, the vertex groups did get transferred to weights, so now we do have the weights, but as you can see, it's like dirty and sloppy. Even if we add another interpolator one, it's gonna be messy. It's gonna be like rogue weights or overfront weights. Also, to the fact that characters have extra weights sometimes, so the skirt has extra bones. The other method is to, map it out yourself. So you say, okay, this is here, this is there. We're using the thighs right now, so I'm hunting for the left thigh really quickly. As you see, it takes time. So it's 73. So right thigh is 50, left thigh 73. And then we map that out manually. And then we can throw those specific weight numberings on our own. The other method that's kind of outdated is the bones. Now I say outdated because if I downloaded these bones, some of the bones aren't updated to the new player character data. So it's going to be off. You'll see right now. So we're back in Amber's bones. So we just downloaded all the bones. And here they are, the armature set. But you'll see that it's dated. So we transfer in the bones using appending. Oh, the links will be down below. So if you want to go grab them anyway, go for it. Because some of them do work. Some of them don't. And then check out the deforms and you'll see they're messed. So this one won't work for whatever we're going to be trying to do. Like imagine you rig a character to that and then you transfer in game. It's going to look like a mess. So yeah, this one won't work. But this one will. This one is Bennett's. It's still working as of today. So whenever this recording comes out, you can see the deforms are perfect. This would be the in-game skeleton. This is what the numbers are. So yeah, this is useful, especially if you don't want to go back and forth between in-game and in Blender. So there is the FBX models. I'll also link that one below. And the FBX models already have bones. They're already weighted and everything. But this is just to showcase the mirror. So you can see the original asset of the game. It's like mirrored. If we export it from 3D Migoto, 3D Migoto is going to flip it. It's going to mirror it. That's why it's mirrored. But if we do it like straight up, it's going to come in the game mirrored. And the fix for that is you got to re-weight it. So you got to do the weights again. And that's why you got to make sure that it's correct the first time. So that was the outdated methods. So the new method to get the bones, instead of using the thing, what we need to do is we head over to, well, you see how we downloaded the FBX ones, and the FBX already have his bones, and they're also mirrored. So what we need to do is grab those bones and throw it onto the other. And that's what the armature XXMI exactly does. This one's by Gustav, and we just downloaded the raw Python. So this is the full update where we're now using the new Blender and the XXMI add-on instead. And the XXMI add-on is the newly updated one that has the availability to use the new Blender, and it can do all the importing for Genshin, Honkai Star Rail, and ZZZ, and I think a separate one for Wuthering Waves. So yeah, now we're gonna do an import using XXMI. It's gonna be just basically the same thing. It just has extra cleanup if you want to use that. And I'm adding the collections to throw in Amber and the FBX version. As you can see, the XXMI tools adds a little bit extra functionality than the other one. All these are made by, the XXMI tools made by Leo Mods. But here's the armature matching. The armature XXMI. So it's a simple process. What we gotta just basically do is import the FBX as well. We have both the FBX and the original. Once we import the FBX, little cleanup real quick. Gonna do it. And then I'm not moving it. out of the center. I'm going to keep it right in the center just in case. So we throw in the collections for the original amber and then the new target FBX one. We grab the armature. We do a mirror because remember that it's mirrored. So we mirror it. I did a clean armature. I think you could do that before or after, I'm not sure. It just removes any ones that doesn't have any weights. And then finally we do a quick match armature. And it's set. From here you can give it a little test. You can do a little rotation on the leg or whatever. And it works. But we gotta delete this one because it merged all the objects, I think, apparently. I'm not particularly sure how that works, but bringing in a new one will be fine. And then all we do is parent it and we're done. So now we have the new method of getting the weight bones armature in there so that we can then test it and then get it right. And this works for not only Genshin, but the other ones as well. Also, when you have the bones, you no longer have to manually write it down or anything. You now can use the new armature as a weighting tool. There's also a new update for the weight transfer. Well, more like an add-on. So this is the robust weight transfer. It's linked. This one is the one that improves the weight transfer so we can transfer the weights with better results because the native one really kind of sucks. So yeah, those are the new updates that we can use and they all work in the new Blender. So yeah, there's a new update. The old method is now outdated. So talking about orphan weights or rogue weights, you'll see sometimes, this one I did on purpose, but you'll see sometimes that in game it'll look like that. You'll have this pull and it's kind of a pain in the butt to clean, but a quick one is, do a quick smooth and then go through normalize all. So you have to make sure that all the weights are normalized. If it goes over, it's going to mess up. If it goes under 0, it's going to mess up. So between 0 and 1, nothing over, nothing under. So another trick is using custom colors. I like to use the full spectrum. So I have black at like 0 and then 1 is like at 0.001. So I could really spot out those rogue weights. So we're now reaching the end. So this is like the last stuff. And this is basically exporting into the file that we imported from. So Amber, we got from the player character data Amber, and then we're going to export back into the player character data Amber. We can keep that export in there blank, but we do want to export selected. But if we do, and we only select the body, then we'll have errors. We need to make sure that we export the body, the head, or any other body part that is needed. We have to export all of them. So we're going to go back, delete loose, get rid of anything. What we're doing here is we're going to be joining the cube to the head. Now, what I did here was to showcase that if we wanted to just remove the head, we would need at least one face. So I was going to put the face, which I usually do, but I want to just remove a part. So I don't want the head. I don't want the hair. I want to remove that and then shrink it down right into the center. So there's always a single face in any body part. But in this time, I didn't need to do that because I was going to just join the cube to the head. Now, the reason we don't see the head is because the face is already in game and we can't really edit that. So we're only stuck editing the hair and the body. The face can be edited. What we can do is we can skip it so we can kind of get rid of it in the game. But that's it. What we can do to replace the head, though, is we can, place a fake head and then skip it in the game. So now we're exporting after we joined it to the head. So the sphere to the head. And there we go. But we got to be careful with the vertex count. It can't go over like 400k. So if you're already at like 200, you're getting pretty high. 300, you're really high. And the more verts you have, the longer it takes to export. So when we go into player character data, we can see that the mod is right there. So we just copy it, place it into the mod folder, and then we got to replace the textures. So there's about, the textures we edited. That's why they have to have the same name. We just grab them, copy, go back to the mod folder, and then place them in. So yeah, we got to make sure we replace it, because if we don't, it's going to come up with the original textures. So here's another example of another error that can happen when exporting is we export and the main names don't match. Now this happens if you have like an older version of a character you got from an old one, and then you just updated the player character data and they changed the name. So you're going to have a name issue. Like one of the quick fixes for this is just change the name up there. The other one is just do the traditional join. So you grab the old asset, grab the new one, and join it to the new one. Now we're going to the last final part, the ini. So the ini is the brain of the operation. This is where we can do that skip for the face. This is where we can also see that the reason that the name for the textures has to be specific is because it's linked specifically here. You'll see in the resources. So that's why I consider it the brain, but we don't need to do anything from here because we're done. We edited, we're done. That's it. We don't need to edit anything else for the ini. The mod is done. So what's after this is you gotta go test the mod. You gotta test it, and you gotta go back, fix what's broken, test it again, fix, test, fix. So you're testing the textures, you're testing the model itself, and then you're testing the waypaint. A lot of the common errors are usually due to normalization. So like it's not 0 to 1, it's like a little over, so it goes off. And to fix that, all you need to do is go in, you got to go back and do a full normalize all, and that takes care of that. So yeah, that's the end of this tutorial. With that, you should be able to make your own mods depending on how well you can model and texture. That's all up to you. This wasn't a lesson on modeling and texturing. This was a lesson on specifically modding. But as soon as this tutorial drops, I'm going to head over to a live stream immediately, and it's going to be all focused on making mods. So if you want extra info, if you just want to jump in, check it out, that's cool. All right.